welcome to this edition of the program. Our focus today is on the 2023 session of the United Nations General Assembly, otherwise known as Unga. I am Imoni Amarere. Nigeria's President Bola Ahmed Tinubu arrived in New York on Sunday to join other world leaders for the 78th session of the United Nations General Assembly. It is his first since becoming president on May 29. This year's Unga is taking place amidst serious global challenges, which include climate change disruptions, worsening poverty and food insecurity, wars, natural disasters, rising inflation, deepening inequalities, and escalating humanitarian crises. The high-level general debate of the Assembly will kick off on Tuesday and run until Saturday, September 23rd. Under the theme, Rebuilding Trust and Reigniting Global Solidarity, Accelerating Action on the 2030 Agenda and its 17 Sustainable Development Goals towards peace, prosperity, progress, and sustainability for all. The world leaders are expected to discuss and debate how to confront the many global crises and find strategies to accelerate action on the 2030 Agenda and for sustainable development. Now, on the sidelines of the high-level debates, there will be a Climate Ambition Summit as well as a political forum on Sustainable Development Goals, otherwise known as the SDGs. Over the years, the United Nations General Assembly has been criticized as an ineffective and inefficient talking shop, essentially because its resolutions are not legally binding on its 193 members. The question has therefore always been, and it's been asked, why is the United Nations General Assembly so important that world leaders must gather every year to engage in what some describe as mere debates? How, what, and why will this year's session be different from the previous ones? What will change after the 78th Assembly? What will Nigeria be bringing to the table when President Tinubu addresses the world on the Unga platform on Tuesday? Well, these are the issues we'll be looking at on the program today, and of course, we will be joined by well-informed analysts who will examine the theme of the 78th Unga session and the several other issues that will be thrown up or are thrown up by the global developments so far. We shall meet our guest analysts right after this. All right, thank you so much for joining us. Our focus is the United Nations General Assembly, which is ongoing as we speak in the United States of America, New York to be precise, which is the headquarters of the UN. I'm joined in the studio by two guests, and a third will be joining us online very shortly. But first, here in the studio, we have Andrew Mamedu. Andrew Mamedu is the country director, Action Aid Nigeria, an organization that has been in the forefront of the clamor for a more just world order. Thank you so much, Andrew, for finding the time to join us.
Thank you. Good morning.
We're also joined in the studio by Mr. Adoyi Matthew. Mr. Matthew is a lecturer at the Base University here in the nation's capital and is an international affairs analyst. Thank you so much, Mr. Adoyi Matthew, for joining us.
Good afternoon.
Welcome.
And I'm happy to be here on AIT.
And shortly, we will be joined by Professor Bola Akiterewa. He is the former Director General, Nigerian Institute of International Affairs, NIIA, in Lagos, and a veteran diplomat. He'll be joining us shortly via Zoom from Lagos. All right, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. The 78th session of the UN General Assembly. Many wonder what is going to be different this time around.
Okay, thank you very much, Shimoni. So it's once you're beginning to do things year in, year out, it becomes a ritual. So we are used to it every year at about this time. World leaders would gather to mark and take stock. So it's supposed to be with taking stock on the SDG. So we have the 17 goals that have been set up and are signed up by 166 countries. And normally we should be able to say, how far have we gone with the last commitments we made when we were here last year? What actions have we taken? Have we made progress? Are we retrogressing? And each country, are there supports you would require? Are there things, peer support mechanism, peer review mechanisms that would happen that needs to take place at those meetings? But clearly, that is what it's supposed to be. But at the end of the day, we are not saying it's not bringing the level of action and the level of results that we would have been hoping for as citizens and as country. But clearly, it's something that ought to be done. But clearly, the result coming from it is not commensurate with what expectations are.
Mr. Adoyi, why is the United Nations General Assembly, otherwise known as Unga, so important?
Yes, the United Nations General Assembly is very, very important. It's one of the highest organs of the United Nations, where presidents of the countries of the world meet annually to address issues that affect humanity, that affect the entire world. And it's very significant because we know that the world is facing a lot of challenges, from climate change, just like you said during the prologue, to issues of insecurity, to even galvanizing global efforts like the SDGs and the MDGs before it. So the world leaders gather to take a proactive look at the various issues. How have we fared in the last 1 year? We know that there's a lot. If you look at the theme of this year's Unga, is to bring global effort together to consolidate on the gains of what has transpired in the last 1 year. So definitely the world need to be put together in one swoop to fight most of the issues that we are grappling with. The issues of poverty, especially in the third world country, is still there, it's still endemic. Issues of unemployment is still there. Issues of inequality between the developed states of the West and the underdeveloped countries, the South, and so on. All that are the issues that when world leaders gather like this, they try to address to see how these things can be solved.
Mr. Mamedu, let's look at the theme, or the central theme for this year's Unga, which is rebuilding trust and reigniting solidarity. That must sound very familiar with you, as it were. Well, I mean, I'm flowing from what Mr. Adoyi has said now. If in the last 1 year, at the 77th Unga, for instance, similar plans as have been laid out for this year were made, one is beginning to wonder how much progress was made between the last September and this September that now requires a review and perhaps a reaffirmation by the 78th Unga. How much of trust has been built around the world? How much of solidarity has been built around issues across the globe in the last 1 year, considering the fact that in the last 1 year, like he said, there has been deepening hunger, there has been deepening poverty, greater inequality, wars, natural disasters, and what have you?
Okay, thank you very much, Imani. Again, let's start from the global perspective, then I'll then come to Nigeria. Now, if you look at the global perspective, a couple of things have affected the level of progress towards the SDGs. And the biggest of them all has been the Russian-Ukraine crisis, which definitely affected the level of poverty, hunger, cost of food. The common slogan, the triple Fs, food, fuel, and fertilizer, was a major fallout. High cost of these items was a major fallout from that crisis. And of course, there's the huge issue of suspicion, alignment and cross-alignment between global powers. So it is natural to talk about issues of building trust and, of course, solidarity. But coming back home in Nigeria, the level of poverty has worsened. The level of inequality is getting worse. So if you look at Nigerians' rating, so every year you have the analysis that is done to look at where countries are. So Nigeria is currently rated at 146 out of 166 in terms of achievement of the SDGs. So what we were better off last year. This year we have dropped a bit. So clearly it shows that for us as a country, we are not making the same level of progress. It is common across the world. So the like inflation rates, the level of hunger, poverty, the level of progress made between last year and this year has been minimal, but there has been a bit of increment across the world. But in Nigeria, our own case was that we had a reduction. We didn't have an increase between last year and this year. So it goes to show that within the Unga, some countries go ahead to take decisions and actions that make them see progress, while some countries, the actions and the decisions they take do not give them that level of progress. Now, the truth is, there is the global north and the global south. So countries will fight for their own advantage. You look at what would benefit them. So in this summit, for instance, our president going there, we expect that there will be lots of side meetings. We've heard that, it's going to have meetings with Mobile, with X, with a whole lot of big giant tech companies, which would look at how does that translate to improvements in our foreign direct investment in the country. And if that happens, how does that translate to reduction in poverty eventually? How does that increase our GDP eventually? So those are the kind of benefits we will see. So that when we go next year, we will say, has Nigeria improved? But globally, the increase has been very slow. But Nigeria, of course, for us, we have not seen that level of increase that we anticipate. So the theme for this year, it depends on country. So Nigeria should take advantage of the theme, have all the bilateral relationship, have all the meetings with the EU Commission President, with all of those that we need to do. But at the end of the day, between then and now, if we set targets for ourselves, how do we pursue those targets so that next year, when we go back next year, it's not another jamboree for us and we just go there to take the bus of attendance.
Agenda 2030 is at the center of this year's General Assembly. And Agenda 2020 is simply the 17 SDG goals. Now, this assembly hopes that it would be able to galvanize support and action to accelerate the attainment of those 17 goals. Where in 2023, the SDGs came on board in 2015. Between now and 2030, it's less than 7 years, or just about 7 years, so to say. If we've not been able to attain 50% of what was hoped to be achieved between 2015 and 2023, what is the hope that we can galvanize enough solidarity and action to achieve these goals in 2030? In other words, is Agenda 2030 attainable?
Well, 7 years is a lot in the life of any nation. What we need to do is to try to galvanize global efforts, get all the needed support, and also do a lot of reforms domestically so that we can be able to fix infrastructure, we can be able to fight poverty, we can be able to develop our power sector through use of renewable energy and so on. All this, if we take the next 3 years and we concentrate seriously on the issue of infrastructural deficit, roads, access to rural areas, power, and we prioritize these key sectors, we will go a long way. Yes, 7 years for us to achieve all those might not be feasible now because of time, but we can go a long way if we are serious, if budgets are implemented the way it should be implemented, if our health facilities, the government will have to prioritize key sectors like health, education, power. If we can take these three and concentrate within the next 7 years, we would have gone a lot. But that we are going to achieve the 17. If we can take these 3 or 4 sectors, it will have a multiplier effect on the others, like issues of gender, women empowerment, youth, and so on. By the time power is running very well, by the time our health facilities are giving priority attention, by the time education is also giving priority education, it will have a multiplier effect on the other SDGs. So I think we need to put more efforts, especially now that there's going to be a lot of funds available to government from the removal of subsidy. If it will not go the way of previous funds that is available to government, when we hear of padding in the National Assembly, when we hear of the corruption within the government, if those things can be plucked domestically, the funds that are available will go a long way. And we must not leave everything to the federal government. The states and local government are also very critical in meeting the SDGs. And as our president is in the Unga, just like my colleague here has said, he needs to still bilaterally talk with different leaders. I hear that he's supposed to meet with President Biden of the US. I hear that there are a lot of meetings that he's supposed to hold with various world leaders. That is very important. It is very good. But what we need more is to also to jumpstart our economy, is to give confidence to the international community. Our president needs to assure the international community that if they are bringing in their money here, the issues of insecurity that we are suffering, we need to give them assurance that their investment is safe domestically. With the spate of kidnapping and other forms of insecurity in the country, he needs to really explain to the international community that what government is doing to stop this insecurity, which, to my mind, is affecting for a lot of foreign investment that ought to have come into this country. So whether we are going to meet MDG or not, squarely rest on the new government that have taken power. What are they going to do differently from the other government that have come in the past? Are they going to introduce budgetary reforms? Are they going to introduce new form of economic management of our economy? Are they going to lay emphasis on key sectors that I have outlined? So all that will determine on whether we'll meet up with the 2030 agenda. On the African scale, with the spate of coups and insecurity and instability, it shows that we in Africa will have a long way to go. Just like he has said, a lot of countries are making progress. But countries like Rwanda, countries like Botswana, countries like South Africa, on the continent they are making very good progress. But we also, as the largest black nation in the world, we also need to push so that we can also compete with these countries that are making good of the opportunity of the MDGs. The international community should not be tired of assisting Nigeria. We have a lot of issues and both the EU, the United Nations, and its agencies, like the World Health Organization, or we really need their support and backing. And that is where the dexterity of the president in speaking to world leaders, in speaking to these international bodies to assist Nigeria. Let the assistance not go the way it was before. We take a lot of foreign loans, foreign grants, and then we don't see physically on ground what these loans or grants are being used for. And that is the sad situation of our country. We believe that this government should be able to change that narrative so that the international community will have more confidence that whatever aids, whatever grant, whatever loan that is being given to us is effectively being utilized and the people can feel the impact. I think that is the basic problem with our meeting up with the SDG targets. A lot of water, there's no water in most rural communities. People have to rely on borehole. In short, public water supply in most parts of the country is gone. And potable water is one of the key issues with the MDGs, one of the 17 MDGs. In terms of energy, last week I heard the national grid collapse again, and so on and so forth. So we really need to do a lot if we must meet up.
Does it make any big difference that this administration, for instance, appears to be placing a lot more emphasis on attracting investments rather than seeking loans and grants and aid?
Like I said earlier, it is not a misplaced priority for the administration to be seeking foreign investment. What foreign investment does to an economy is that it brings a lot of liquidity into the economy. It creates a lot of job opportunity. Government will earn a lot of taxes from these foreign investments. But you see, the foreign investor who is bringing in his resources is interested in making profit. But the situation whereby diesel is selling at 800 naira, he has to do his own power, he has to do his own water supply, the cost of running these businesses will be too high, and then it will translate into cost of production, which ultimately the citizens will bear the brunt of it. So in as much as we are seeking for foreign direct investment, the enabling environment for these investments to thrive will need to be put in place. Some years back, we heard that companies were relocating from this country to Ghana and to other parts of Africa. That is unacceptable. We are the largest economy in Africa, and there's no reason why, with our population of over 200 million people and the market, we should be rejecting foreign investors. But it is the other way around because of the way we have doing business here can be very tough. Not only for foreign investors, even our local businessmen here. Doing business can be very, very tough and tiring. Multiple taxation. This one will come, you pay, this one will come. And most investments are collapsing because of this type of attitude.
All right. Andrew, I'll come back to you very quickly. So we will be looking at giving a global perspective, for instance, to the Agenda 2030. But I understand that Professor Bola Akinterewa, former Director General of the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs and a veteran diplomat, is with us now. He's joining us from Lagos. Thank you so much, Prof, for finding time to join us. We're focusing on Unga, the 78th session of the UN General Assembly. I hope, Prof, that you can hear us loud and clear.
Yes, I can hear you very well. I'm speaking with you from on my way to Akure.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much.
I have to stop to be able to attend to you.
Great. Thank you, Prof. Thank you. So we are looking at the 78th Unga. And the theme of this year is, of course, has to do with rebuilding trust and reigniting solidarity. That is the major theme for this year's Unga. Our president, of course, is attending Unga for the first time since he took power. And the expectations are very high. Many have said in the past that the General Assembly itself has become ineffective and inefficient. Do you agree with that characterization?
It all depends on what one is considering as dynamics. It is true, the UN has become inefficient and irrelevant. But it is also true that for now it is also indispensable. And so, depending on the different factors being considered, you see, for instance, how do we talk about and why do we talk about inefficiency? We have a classical reason. That is the factor of veto, the use of veto, which is provided for specifically in Articles 108, 109 of the UN Charter, which require that even if you want to reform the United Nations, and African people have been actually asking for democratization, particularly democratic reform of the United Nations Security Council. But you see, Articles 108, 109 specifically require the uh, unanimity. It provides that, yes, we can reform, we can amend the constitution, the charter of the UN, if we have two-thirds majority voting. But the two-thirds majority must include the votes of the 5 permanent members. And now the P5, the permanent 5, wouldn't concede with ease with you know the constitution, the definition, reforming of the UN. So in this case, it's an obstacle. And that is why, for instance, it has become very difficult for the UN to perform well. Take the Ukrainian-Russian war, for instance. The United States and the other veto powers can only threaten Russia. There's absolutely nothing they can do to Russia because veto will be used by Russia. And you only need, the vote of one. You can have 54, 55 countries from Africa voting yes, but at the end of the day, you only need, in fact, not to exaggerate, 1/4 vote, veto vote, to neutralize the whole thing. So when they say a tree does not make a forest, not in the context of United Nations Security Council, you need only one vote will neutralize everything. Now, but if we say again that yes, the UN is still relevant, we still need it, well, we have always been told that it is better to jojo than to war. So it is an assembly for exchanging ideas. Now, the theme for this year, you just said trust and solidarity. What is this solidarity for? Who is prepared for solidarizing in this particular case? When we know, please let me tell you, the policy attitude of the United States has made crystal clear by Joe Biden. When, for instance, the United Nations decided to vote in order to condemn Russia for invasion of Ukraine, the US talked about invasion aggression. The Russians said no, their own is special military intervention. Now, the resolution of the UN was couched in such a way as to condemn Russia. But what happened was that the African countries mostly refused to vote, they abstained, and rather than being a friend of one and the enemy of the other, they didn't vote. This angered the United States. And President Joe Biden came up with a policy attitude that, look, the US will sanction. Please, that sanction is not my own word. I'm quoting. The US will sanction any country that votes against United States foreign policy interests. Now you are talking about sovereign equality. Please, where is the sovereignty? Where is the sovereignty that is equal? So the US has threatened. Now you are not talking about inefficiency, or you are talking about solidarity. Where will the solidarity come from? The situational reality as of today is that the world has become sharply divided. A new world order is in the making. And I don't know if you are talking about solidarity at the bilateral level, at the plurilateral level, or at the multilateral level. In that case, yes, if a few countries are coming together at the regional level, which is plurilateral, there may be solidarity, like we are talking about ECOWAS solidarity. ECOWAS is even divided. ECOWAS wanted to, restore the administration of Mohamed Bazoum in the Niger Republic. But ECOWAS is divided against itself. The Francophone within ECOWAS is divided. The Lusophone, the Arabophone, they are divided. For instance, Mali, Burkina Faso are ready to give active support to the military junta in Niger. Now, if you don't have solidarity at home, if you don't have solidarity regionally, how can you be talking about global solidarity? When, for instance, the Western world as at now know quite well that, look, the new world order that they're making, the BRICS is fighting the current Bretton Woods institutions put in place. They want to de-dollarize international economic relations. So when you look at all this, you are trusting who? Who is trusting who? Who wants solidarity? Now, the issue, let me tell you the international politics of the permanent seat. When the African Union initially, before going to Swaziland, where what they call the Zuluwini consensus was reached, the African countries asked for 5 seats, permanent seats for Africa, in the hope that there will be 1 seat for each region of Africa. But the issue is that America and a host of others said, no, it will be too unwieldy. They don't want that they will be prepared to concede 2 seats to Africa. Good enough. But the issue is that the United States favors Egypt. And the United States will want Nigeria and South Africa to compete, to contest for the other seat. Now you are talking about solidarity. You are talking about trust. Who should trust who? Now, South Africa only came into being more realistically in 1994 after the apartheidization. Now, Nigeria that had been involved since 1960, engaged in peacekeeping, peace enforcement, peace support operations of the United Nations. Nigeria has been there, but they want to edge the country out. So, for me, what I have called Tinubu diplomacy, you focus greater attention on things like that, where our interests will be better protected. The immediate past interlocutor, my colleague, who you asked the question on foreign direct investments. You see, foreign direct investments have their own interests, have their own advantages, and so on and so forth. The bottom line is that Africa, in order to survive and be relevant, should be more interested in trading in trading. So we should be more productive, have something to exchange internationally. That is how and where foreign direct investments will be useful. Let them invest in productive sectors, not that we should be investing in production of raw materials for development of Europe. We shouldn't do that one. Dr. Okoye Aripo, who was Minister of External Affairs under Yakubu Gowon, made it clear that Nigeria and Africa will not accept, the export of raw materials from the continent for the development of Europe. He made that one clear.
But that's what we have done over the years.
Focus on things like this.
Yes, Prof. I was saying that contrary to what Dr. Okoye Aripo propounded, we have just been doing the exact opposite over the years. We have been exporting raw materials to the Western world.
You cannot be more correct. That's what I'm saying. So Tinubu diplomacy should be well articulated. We should sit down and then begin to think forwardly, not just looking at what we get immediately. When we talk about foreign direct investments, okay, look at what is happening. Our president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, did well. He went to India. When he was returning, he passed through Abu Dhabi. He passed through United Arab Emirates. And reportedly, they reached an agreement, an entente, according to which, for instance, the ban, the visa ban placed on Nigerians was lifted. But that was not true. Research reports have shown that they are saying in Abu Dhabi that, look, they have more critical issues. They are more interested in the 85 million US dollars that they could not have access to. They are raising different other issues. The 19 other countries that were, they suspended this issue of policy or introduced the policy in October last year, they are still there. So our president must learn to make haste slowly. Making haste slowly when it comes to foreign policy. And they must be more careful in rushing to announce policies. No, they must look deeply into the situational reality on ground. What they met on ground, they should understand it. So if, for instance, and I must insist on this, if under Muhammadu Buhari, the relationship got strained and they have not been able to allow, Abu Dhabi, Etihad, and Emirates. So what they are normally doing is that they didn't allow Air Peace, which was plying their route, 2 flights per day to Lagos, 1 flight per day to Abuja, to and fro. Now, they will not allow Air Peace, for instance, to land in Abu Dhabi. They are giving their secondary airport. They are not doing that. And they do not want Air Peace to have the same number of flights. Please, international relations is governed stricto sensu by the principle of reciprocity. So we should not say because we want foreign direct investments, then you subjugate your own subjects, your people, to unnecessarily international irritants.
All right.
In such a way that, okay, you reach an agreement with they are denouncing.
Prof, let me bring in Andrew at this point into the discussion. Andrew, you've been listening to Prof. It's been very extensive and expansive in his attack on the various issues. But of course, the whole issue of Agenda 2030 is still very much there. Let's give a global perspective to it. Mr. Doi narrowed it down to what Nigeria needs to do and what Nigeria must do. But of course, the whole essence of Agenda 2030, according to the UN, is towards not just building trust, but of course, towards creating peace, prosperity, and sustainability for all across the world.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think, Prof, of course, all the points raised by Prof, I totally agree with them. And the UN definitely have to refine itself in playing that role. Generally, the global north has been on the disadvantaged. So if you take when you had the colonialism, when we had colonialism, who benefited at the end of the day? It was the colonial master that got paid for letting go the subjects. When you came to the issue of foreign trade, foreign direct investments, who gets the benefits? So when you come to the Bretton Woods institution, who does it benefit? It benefits the global north as against the global south. Recently, there have been a whole lot of debates around the climate justice, climate change.
Yes.
So if you come to the issue of climate change, who does it benefit? It also benefits the global north. I'll give you a practical example. Africa contributes between 2 to 3% to global emission.
If not less.
If not less. 2% to global emission. But the effects of the global emission, Africa is in the front line, and the effect is over 60% on Africa. So if we need to have that debate around climate justice, we're not saying that Africa does not contribute to it, but the proportion for which Africa is contributing to it. So the whole debate around tree planting, it's good. The whole debate around fossil fuel is good. But we need to look at how do we deal with issue of reciprocity so that Africa benefits from those damages that have been recorded in Africa. How do we get China, the global north to be able to pay back to what is happening to Africa in real terms, beyond just carbon buyback? Carbon buyback for us is more like tokenism. It's like, oh, let's continue polluting the environment, let's continue worsening this situation, and after all, we'll just pay back for it. That is a no-no for us. What would benefit Africa? So enough of raw materials. Oh, we would buy your raw materials, we'll buy the oil, no, that is not what we want. But how do we make Africa the production hub? I think Africa needs to, even within the side meeting in the US, in New York, Africans still need to sit down together and have their own debates, have their own discussion around the United States of Africa that we have been talking about, that Gaddafi pushed so much around. It is time for us to come back to it. How would Africa benefit from this? How would we put our power, our forces together so we have things that would benefit us at the end of the day? The level of flooding that happened last year, one farm alone, I know of one farm alone, the Olam farm, just in Nasarawa here, just that flooding alone took away $15 million worth of investment from them, just one farm. And that is not a small-scale farm. And that can contribute to less than 10% of the farming institution within the state. Smallholder farming contributes over 80% of the farming within the state. So that goes to say that with that flooding alone, which is as a result of global warming, as a result of climate change, that means they lost over $200 million in just one state last year alone. And this year, the flood series have started. You saw some pictures in Lagos and all of that. So that is what is happening at the global level and how it's affecting us. So I think what we are saying is our leaders need to come to the discussion table and start having discussions around how would all of these engagements, how would our seat on the table favor Africa? How will it favor Nigeria? So we definitely, the woman in the community, the smallholder woman farmer that does not understand the international politics, the international dimension to climate change, at the end of the day, those things happen in China, they happen in the US. Her farm is washed away. So we need to sit down in those tables and begin to say, who do we hold responsible for this? How will these communities pay the price for all of this that is happening in Africa and in Nigeria generally?
But Prof, let me come to you very quickly before we let you off. This whole issue of trust and unity in Africa. Andrew just talked about why African leaders must come together and speak with one voice on issues. For instance, on climate change. How is that achievable, given what you just described earlier on about the sharp divisions that exist, even in Africa today?
Andrew was quite correct. I agree in total with his analysis. Fortunately, I had the opportunity to be in the UN summit held in Copenhagen, where this question you are asking me was tabled for discussion. That year, Chief Ojoma Dweke was foreign minister. I was his essay, and he took me along. All the discussions were held, and I was present. So I can talk very authoritatively on the matter. By that time, Ambassador Igali, God knows, was Nigeria's plenipotentiary to Copenhagen. The discussion was that African leaders at that particular meeting made it clear that, look, why should they be made to pay as much? Why should they be made to pay as much that they were not in any way responsible for the carbonization of the ozone layer, that the developed worlds are responsible? They do not want to assist. They do not want to pay anything. So that is the politics. That is the issue at stake. So if you are now asking, what was the attitudinal disposition of the African people by that time? It was unity, no doubt. But the problem now is that in terms of trust, in terms of solidarity, in terms of hopes, in terms of expectations, which is the theme of our discussion here, I do not think that that solidarity can be easily forthcoming, simply because African leaders are working against Africa's interests. They support, you know, the Europeans, the Americans, and they are being used against their own interest. This is the fundamental problem. Now, you talk about climate change. We have this problem. African leaders are yet to seriously take the issue of climate change. And when you talk about Agenda 2030, Agenda 2030 is subsumed under Agenda 2063 of the African Union. So, Agenda 2063 has been divided into, periods during which certain objectives are supposed to be achieved. The United Nations agenda, well, I would say it's complementary to the African Union agenda rather than the contrary. Why? Because what the African leaders are placing emphasis on, the climate change in the context of, global warming, and it's not the same thing as climate change in Africa. It's not the same priorities. So specifically, how do we move forward? Let African leaders sit down, like Andrew had rightly suggested, to take climate change in terms of its peculiarities in Africa and not begin to deal with that. This idea of solidarity, going to beg for assistance here and there, I'm very against that. I do not like the idea of any country giving any aid, what they call development aid, to Africa, for two reasons. Reason one is simply that, look, you give aid, but you are the one giving the materials, the equipment, which you are going to use the money for. It is your staff, it is your personnel that will execute. So the only thing is that, yes, you are bringing the instruments for development, but you are not transferring technology to the people. The second reason is that because you are giving us aid, that aid has not enabled us to strive, to struggle, to use our own common sense. And I can tell you that Africans, they have common sense.
All right, Prof.
Internationally,
We must go now. I'm sorry to cut you short, Prof, but we have to go now. Our time is up. Mr. Adoyi, very quickly, what do you think is the future of the SDGs? Very quickly, in 60 seconds.
Well, the SDGs were well crafted. It spells clearly the problem, especially with the developing world. The 17 SDGs are the problems that we are grappling with. There's no doubt about it. And we must take proactive steps as Africans, as the underdeveloped economies, to try and meet up with the SDGs. We have no other choice, because meeting up with the SDGs will enhance our collective well-being as a people.
Thank you so much.
It will enhance our communities and so on.
All right, thank you so much. Adoyi Matthew is a lecturer at the Bayes University here in the nation's capital, and he's also an international affairs analyst. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And of course, we've also been joined by Professor Bola Akitenrewa, former Director General of the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs, NIIA, Lagos. He joined us on the road between Owo and Akure. Thank you so much for finding time to join us, Prof. Prof is also a veteran diplomat. And here in the studio, we have also been joined by Andrew Mamedu. Andrew is the country director, Action Aid Nigeria, an organization that, of course, has been in the forefront of the clamor for a more just world order. Thank you so much, Andrew, for finding time to join us. And for you, our viewers out there, we thank you for joining us. We will be bringing you a lot more on the United Nations General Assembly in our various programs and news bulletins on this station as we get into the General Assembly sessions proper. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is scheduled to address the General Assembly on Tuesday, sometime around 9 p.m. or thereabout Nigerian time. We will be bringing that one to you live. For now, thank you for staying with us.